Daniel 7 begins the visions of Daniel, the end time visions, and Daniel 7 relates to us now, today. And a lot of people don't believe that. But let me start out with Daniel 7 by reminding you that in Matthew 24, Jesus said, "Nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. These are the beginnings of sorrow." In other words, this nation against nation, these world wars, the world wars will begin the end time sorrows that lead to the Great Tribulation. Now, world wars happened only once in our history, and that is World War I and II. We keep looking for a World War III. It is coming. But World Wars I and II, really one war, happened in the beginning of the 20th century, and they marked the beginning of sorrows. Now let's look at Daniel and see if Daniel doesn't say the exact same thing. Daniel says, in verse 2, chapter 7, he says, "I saw in my vision by night, and behold," so Daniel had a dream, a nightmare. "I saw in my visions by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea." The four winds of heaven is the whole world. It's the whole world. And the four winds of heaven strove, or were at war, over the Great Sea. The Great Sea is the Mediterranean Sea. It is the Mediterranean Sea. Look it up in your concordance. The Great Sea is always the Mediterranean Sea in Scripture, in the Old Testament. So there is war, and the whole world is at war of the Great Sea. Daniel begins his visions with World Wars I and II. Let's just call them the World Wars. Daniel begins his time period there. He's talking about the period Jesus called the times of sorrow. And so Daniel is beginning with the times of sorrow. And so he says, what happens when these world wars came about? And that was in the beginning of the 20th century. Well, Daniel says what happens next. Four great beasts came up from the sea, different from one another. Now, these four beasts are alliances that came out of the world wars. They are not ancient kingdoms described in Daniel 2. These are entirely different. These are four kingdoms that came out of the world wars. And the first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. This alliance that came out of the world wars is the lion, Great Britain, and the United States, its ally. Before that, they were not allies. They were, well, actually, the United States had fought 2 wars with Great Britain. And as a result of the world wars, Great Britain and the United States became allies, and they have been allies ever since, even to this day. So the first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. And I beheld till the wings of it were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. So this lion with eagle's wings arose, and it will be in some sort of power until the return of Christ. These things that are being prophesied in these chapters will happen from the time of the world wars to the return of Christ. He says that the wings were plucked. Well, the wings of the United States. So something here sounds destructive for the United States, the wings. And we'll see if there's something that kind of supports that idea. So the next beast to come out of the sea and out of the great wars was like a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and they said to it, "Arise, devour much flesh." Now we know that after the world wars, the bear was Russia, and Russia came up out of the world wars very powerful because it became the Soviet Union, and to this day it's become in alliance with China and Iran, Russia, and North Korea. So it is the 4 feet of the bear today, and we see that language in Revelation 13. But at this time in Daniel, as it comes out of the world wars, it's Russia, and then it will gain its partners, the 4 feet of the bear. And it is powerful. It is the powerhouse of these beasts, and it will devour much flesh. The next beast that came out of the great wars is the leopard, which had on the back of it 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Okay. This beast is European Union. Now let me talk about that for a minute. It's right now the European Union, but it's going to grow. It's going to grow. So let's talk about that. First of all, it says it has on the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. Did you know that during the time of the Second Reich or the Charlemagne, that the symbol for it was 2 eagles, and so that makes 4 wings. 4 wings, and those 2 eagles representing, I believe, Italy and Germany. they were united. And so this European Union, so it had four wings. So what we're talking about is a united Europe. But then it says it also had four heads. So that's not yet happened. And dominion was given to it. Okay, so what does it mean it has four heads? Okay, so we got to learn this if we're going to understand prophecy. The heads on the beast, remember there is a beast in Revelation 13, and it has seven heads. And in Revelation 17, John tells us that the seven heads of the beast are kingdoms that have risen over the earth and had been very powerful over the earth, and that five had fallen in the time of John, and they are Egypt, Assyria, Nebuchadnezzar's Iraq, the Medes and the Persians, Iran, and then the fifth is the Greeks. And they'd all fallen, Alexander's Greeks, they'd all fallen before the time of John, but then in the time of John is the sixth, and that was the Roman Empire. It's one of the Babylon heads, the Roman Empire, and then in the end times, there's going to be a seventh head, which we'll talk about later. But so there are seven heads of the beast. And what Daniel is saying is that four of those heads are in the leopard. In other words, remember, the leopard is the European Union, but it's going to join with three other heads because the European Union is the Roman Empire. So it's one of the seven heads of the beast of Revelation 17. But there's going to be three other heads that are joined to it. And they are, in my opinion, they are Alexander's Greece, and Alexander conquered the Middle East. So I'm talking about the Middle East when I talk about the Greek Alexander Empire. The united Europe will unite in the future with the Middle East, Alexander's empire, that's two heads, and then the Assyrians or Syria, and they will unite with, I believe, Nebuchadnezzar's Iraq, which is now just Iraq. So those are the four heads of the beast of Revelation 17. So the leopard, and they will have dominion over the world. The leopard will have dominion over the world. Dominion over the world, why? Why will that happen? Because the Antichrist will rule out of a united Europe, Middle Eastern empire. Okay, and so now we get to Daniel 7, verse 7. And he says, "After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in places and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 kings." Now that word diverse, I don't think it means different from all the beasts that were before it, the three other beasts. No, I think it means, and it was made up. The fourth beast was made up when the three combined, and it was brought together from the three beasts before it, from the lion with eagle's wings, the leopard, and the bear. So this fourth beast is like a conglomerate of those three, and you can see that in Revelation 13. But anyway, this fourth beast is the beast of Revelation 13. It's yet to arise. It's not quite in the form that it is in Revelation 13. What form is it in today? Well, these three other kingdoms, the leopard, the lion, and the bear, they came together in 1945 to form the United Nations. The countries that I mentioned that are in these alliances are, for the most part, in the Security Council. They are the only members of the Security Council, the only permanent members of the Security Council. So they are in the United Nations. And what's going to happen with the United Nations is it's going to evolve. And we're going to see how it evolves. I'm just going to be completely straight with you as I read through Daniel to say what things I don't want to say, I don't want to talk about, but I'm going to read through it. So let's keep going in verse 8. Remember, this beast had 10 horns. So in the future, the modified United Nations of Revelation 13 will have 10 horns or 10 kings that rule it. So let's read verse 8. "I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them a little horn," that's Antichrist. "And before him 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots." So 3 of those 10 kingdoms are destroyed by Antichrist. "And behold, in this little horn were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things." Now, you know that in Revelation 13, there's a mouth given to the beast, and that mouth is Antichrist. So what we have here is the United Nations here in verse 8 that is in the future. What's going to happen? What's it going to look like? It's going to be run by Antichrist. It's going to have dominion out of the leopard or out of the United European Union along with the Middle East. He'll probably be a Muslim. In fact, he will be a Muslim because in chapter 8, we'll see that the Antichrist arises out of the Middle East, out of the Greek kingdom. So he's going to be that. There are going to be 10 kings around him. Perhaps those 10 kings are BRICS. The BRICS alliance that hates the United States, that wants power over the world. Russia, China, India, Oh, goodness, I got to name all 10. Russia, China, India, Brazil, Iran, Indonesia, South Africa, Ethiopia, Egypt, and United Arab Emirates. There are, at the moment, 10 kings who are part of the BRICS alliance, and they hate the United States. And so perhaps they want to rule over the world, I think. And so what's going to happen is they will be the leaders over the modified future United Nations. How do they get that power? Revelation 17 tells us what they do is they take and they make an ambush and they burn Babylon with fire. Babylon is the world, the seventh Babylon. Remember, Mystery Babylon is the seventh Babylon because we don't know who it is, so it's mystery. Mystery Babylon is the seventh head of Babylon, and at that moment, it is riding over the world, and these 10 kings hate Babylon. They don't want to be bossed around anymore by Babylon, and so they destroy Babylon with fire. And I believe that Babylon is the United States of America, and that these 10 kings will destroy the United States of America, and in doing so, will take over power over the world. And they will recreate a little United Nations that is housed in the Middle East and run by Antichrist. But right now, what we have here is Daniel saying there's alliances that come out of the world wars. There are 10 kings who will arise. There is an Antichrist who will arise. Revelation 17 tells us that those 10 kings will destroy the nation Babylon and the nation that houses the United Nations, the fourth beast, which is the United States of America. And that these 10 kings are going to fight against Christ at his return. This chapter goes all the way to the return of Christ. And this is what is told to Daniel by the angel. These facts, which we see now, can be very much applied to present times. And I think whether it's now or 500 years from now, if there are people sitting there 500 years from now studying this book and studying these chapters, they need to try to apply it to their time to see if it isn't what's happening in their time. In the ancient times, in the old times, the church applied the Babylon to Rome because they believed the Roman Catholic Church was Babylon. But it wasn't true. It isn't true. Babylon is a nation, a city, and that city has the spirit of Babylon trying to unite the world in peace and sort of, we don't need you, God. And that's what the United States has been doing. And the United States dominates the world. So I hope this isn't true. I don't want it to be true. But that's how it looks here. And so we've got to read with open eyes about what's happening in the world. So that's what I'm going to talk about. For the next few days, I'm going to talk about these verses in Daniel, and especially ones that I can point out to you. So until then, God bless you, and study your prophecy. Study 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 of Daniel. And you're going to learn and put it in our context, in our day, and see what you think. God bless you guys. See you later.